Hello, Sigur controllers are capable of supporting the connection of any readers that possess standard output interfaces. This gives you practically unlimited freedom in terms of choosing the method of identification and the cost of the solution itself. And for one access object in Sigur, you can assign multiple identifiers. In some situations, this is done for the convenience of employees' passage. For example, at the checkpoint, you can use contactless cards or even license plate recognition, and at internal points, identification via smartphone. On the other hand, having multiple identifiers can also be utilized to enhance access control, which is also one of the common tasks and responsibilities of ACS. Such scenarios imply either a sequential presentation of selected identifiers by one employee or the mandatory presence of multiple employees to gain access to the premises. The only difference is that in the first case, the employee verifies themselves in the system, while in the second case, someone else must verify, like a guard. Both are supported in Sigur. We have separate videos about complex passage schemes, such as access only in pairs or access with an escort. And this video tutorial is dedicated to setting up multi-factor authentication. In general, this method of identification can be divided into two groups, classical two-factor and more complex schemes, implying the presentation of a larger number of features. At the same time, in Sigur, you can combine several features in such a way that in case one of the verifying devices fails, you can use another one. This significantly increases the reliability of the system. In practice, most often they use exactly two-factor authentication, for example, a card plus a PIN code. In cases where higher security and access strictness requirements are needed, various biometrics are often used as an additional identification feature alongside cards. In addition to the direct purpose of making access to the selected premises as strict as necessary, multi-factor identification can also be used to enhance the overall level of object security. Alright, a common use case is to use EM Marine and HID Prog 125K cards as the main identifier. They easily get copied and passed around by employees who, knowing about such vulnerability, check each other in at the entrance. This not only impacts facility security, but also makes it impossible, for instance, to accurately track work hours. If you have a video surveillance system on the same object or install an additional camera, in Sigur you can level out the downsides of unprotected identification methods by additionally verifying employees by their face. This method doesn't need to replace all readers on the object, and it has no big impact on the throughput of breakpoints. And as a verification tool, you can use either the built-in facial recognition system in Sigur or any other third-party solution integrated with our system. Okay, let's proceed to setting up multi-factor authentication in Sigur. We'll examine it with two examples, when the main feature will be used as a card, and the additional ones will be a code panel and facial biometrics. You can establish the functioning of such a scenario with additional readers too, for instance, fingerprint, palm print, and other handprints. Let's start with one of the most common scenarios, a card plus a PIN code. We already have a keypad panel and MR100 reader connected to the controller, so let's go straight to the software settings. To access the Modes tab in the client program, we need to switch to it. Once there, we can create a new mode, such as the second level, as an illustrative instance for demonstration purposes. Let's call it Card plus PIN code. On the General tab, we need to specify the duration of its validity in order to accurately define its time frame. Let us choose a suitable hotspot for him to work on and select an employee to apply it to. This will ensure that he can focus on his tasks effectively and the chosen employee can implement the necessary changes with expertise. Add at least 1 day and access time for entry and exit on Days tab. Next, on the Special Rules tab, let's enable the additional PIN code request function in our case, when the dial panel is connected in the entrance direction. And click Apply to save the settings. After activating this function, access will only be possible by presenting the card and entering the PIN code. The code is automatically generated for each employee and displayed in their parameters on the Personnel tab. The system generates it randomly based on the employee's pass number and the license number for the Sigur software. So for every object, the PIN code will be unique. Let's test the functionality of the configured logic and ensure its accuracy. To achieve this, let's go to the Observation tab. Then, let's bring the card to the reader. The controller successfully read the identifier, and the system is now requesting a PIN code. Let us input it. After entering the correct personal identification number code, the controller unlocked the access point for passage. You can see all the events on the Observation tab in real time. Now let's consider a scenario of multi-factor identification using facial recognition. We already have the IP camera connected and set up, so let's go straight to the software settings. To activate the functionality, let's go to the program client. In the menu File, Settings, Face Recognition, and activate the functionality by checking the box labeled Enable Face Recognition checkbox option. We should leave the default parameters in this location and proceed by clicking the OK button in order to save the current settings and apply the changes. After that, we can move on to the Equipment tab and make a selection of the access point device from the available options. In the Primary Settings field, let's navigate to the Video Surveillance tab for further configuration and adjustment of the settings. Choose a direction, for example, the entrance. Then, from the drop-down menu, select the added camera. Next, we need to click on the option labeled Allow Verification to proceed with the process. To save the settings, let's click on the Apply button and ensure that the changes are properly saved by clicking on Apply. Then we go to the Modes tab. Ensure that identification and verification are disabled by default in all access modes to enhance security and prevent unauthorized access to sensitive information. It's better to include them in separately created modes of the second or higher level. This way you can flexibly choose which employees to grant access based on their face, only spending the necessary license reserve. Let's create a new mode, for example, the second level. Let's give it a name, for example, Card plus Face. On the General tab, we need to specify the duration of its validity in order to accurately define its time frame. Let's choose a hotspot for it to work on and select an employee to apply it to the designated area of operation. Let's add at least 1 day and access time for entry and exit on the Days tab. Next, on the Special Rules tab, let's enable the face verification feature when entering, in our case. To greatly enhance security and strictness, select Hard only if there is a match for verification. Click on Apply button to save the settings. Now switch to the Observation tab and check how the settings we made are working. Ensure that the changes are reflected correctly and the desired functionality is achieved. Now let's bring the authorized card to the reader and let's look into the camera. On the Observation tab, we can see events about granting access, correct face recognition, and further registration of passage. The recognition algorithm continuously analyzes the camera stream for faces. So when the employee approached the access point and swiped the card, the server dude had already determined if his face was recognized. The decision on access will be made based on the strictness of verification. The functionality discussed in this video is just one way to quickly and practically enhance security on the object without major expenses. Besides, there are many other awesome features in Sigur for configuring intricate access logic, covered in separate videos.